February 4th. Welcome to all of you who are with us this evening, and welcome to our audience who will be watching us on delayed broadcast. Allow me to introduce the board members at the table with me. From my right, we have Ross Harris, Janelle Carter, and Mike Miller. From the left, we have Karina Hernandez, Sean Heitman, and Ben Fletcher. At the center table with me, to my right, is Paulette Newbold. She is the secretary for the board. And to my left is Dr. Theron Schutte, the superintendent of schools, and I am B. Niblack. We have a pink sheet on the table for anyone who would like to visit with the board during public comments or to address the board during any of the agenda items. We ask that you sign up on that sheet. During public comments, you'll be given 5 minutes to speak. And according to policy, we will not respond to your comments, but we thank you for them anyway. Please read with me the mission of the Marshalltown Community School District. We develop learners who have the knowledge, skills, and positive mindset to successfully pursue a meaningful future through personalized learning experiences. And stand as you're able and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And before we move on, I neglected to introduce our student board members. We have with us tonight America Dominguez, Jane Ragland, and Jocelyn Sharfnado. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda?
Yes, we have a few additions and corrections. Added to the list of resignations effective the end of this school year should be Raleigh Ackerman, the Marshalltown High School Activities Athletic Director. That was submitted after we posted the agenda. Also, we have a correction to make in the personnel section under termination with Hester's termination. The date should be effective December 31st, 2018, rather than January 29th, 2019. Also, I would request that we move the FEH presentation 5.01 and 5.02 with Kevin Epperly to immediately following 4.02 dual language. And last but not least, I would request that from 2.08, we drop the swim team donation to a later date.
May I have a motion to approve the agenda as amended?
So moved.
Second. Fletcher Carter, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 7-0. Moving on to the consent agenda. Sorry, I have to catch that. On the consent agenda, are there any additions or corrections to the minutes of the 14th board work session, or the minutes of the 28th?
There are not.
Looking at personnel items, are there any items of note?
Yes, we have a list of 5 individuals who have submitted for early retirement, in addition to, I believe it was the 2 that we previously have approved. Michael Eggleston, who's a physical education teacher at Fisher Elementary. He's taught there since 2002, 2003. Previous to that, he taught at the high school. In his 18 years with our district, he has held various coaching positions, particularly in the sport of football and track. Before coming to Marshalltown, Jeff taught at Mason City and in Nebraska. Also, Deborah Friday, who's a second grade teacher at Hoagland Elementary. She's taught there or with the district since the 2000-2001 school year. While at Hoagland, she's taught K-1 and second grade. Before coming to Marshalltown, Deb taught in at Union Community School District and the Oxford Junction Consolidated School District. Jeff Hoganson is a 7th grade social studies teacher at Miller Middle School, where he's taught since the 2006-2007 school year. Prior to that, Jeff taught social studies at the high school. In his 27 years with our district, he has held various coaching positions in a number of sports at the varsity and middle school level, including football, baseball, and middle school basketball. Before coming to Marshalltown, Jeff taught at Dunkerton Community Schools. Leah Maddox is a 6th grade teacher at Lenahan Intermediate School, where she's taught since 2006-2007. From 1991 to 2006, Leah taught at Anson Middle School. Before coming to Marshalltown, Leah taught at the South Tama Community School District, the Lewis Central Community School District, and the Atumwa School District. And lastly, Elda Reyes, who's an ELL teacher at Franklin Elementary, where she has taught full-time since 2005-2006. During the 2004-2005 school year, her first year with the district, she split her time between Hoagland and Franklin as an ELL teacher. Before coming to Marshalltown, Elda taught in the state of Texas.
Looking at interagency agreements and contracts. We have a number of contracts, and we have 2 level 3 students out of the district. Any questions on those items? Under open enrollment, we have, for the 18-19 school year, we have 2 in and 2 out. And for the 19-20 school year, we have 7 out. Questions? Any items of note on bills? Questions for Paulette? Looking at donations, we have a $5,000 donation to the Marshalltown High School Athletics Department in memory of Derek Williams. May I have a motion to accept the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Miller Hernandez, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 7-0. Anybody on the sheet?
Nope.
Mr. Holmgren, would you and your team like to present?
Well, good evening. We're looking forward to sharing with you tonight a little bit about Franklin. And I have some teacher leaders with me that are going to share some details about what we're highlighting tonight. We decided that we wanted to share with you about our Buddies program. It's something that's happened at Franklin for a long time, just in between various grade levels. This is an opportunity for our younger kids and our older kids to create relationships, for our younger kids to have someone to look up to, and for our older kids being able to talk to a different audience. Many of them have younger siblings, so it just gives them great communication practice as well. Our Buddies program is related to our attendance center plan, and really in 2 areas. The attendance part, the attendance goal that we have. It's amazing the excitement that the kids go through when it's Buddies time. They don't want to miss it. They look forward to it. They talk about it with their families. They talk about it with their friends. So we really want to provide as many meaningful opportunities for our kids as possible. The teacher leaders will share a little bit about some of the things that actually happened during that time in just a few moments. The other area that we really see it helping with our attendance center plan would be our harassment and bullying. Because, as I said, kids are talking to a different audience. They're developing relationships with older kids that they can look up to as role models. They can have opportunities to problem solve with their buddy. They can learn with their buddy, which you'll hear about in just a little bit. So at this time, I'm going to just turn it over to the teacher leaders. If you want to introduce yourself and share your role, and then share what your experience is with buddies.
I'm Amy Phillips, and I teach kindergarten.
Could you take a microphone, please? We want everybody to be able to hear.
Okay, let me state that again. I'm Amy Phillips, and I teach kindergarten at Franklin. I've been at Franklin since it reopened when they remodeled, so I've been there a while, and I've done buddies ever since I've been there. And kindergarten always partners up with third grade. Go ahead.
So I'm Mallory Gent, and I'm a third grade teacher, so this is my 7th year.
We typically meet once a month, always, and sometimes if there's extra special things, we throw in an extra one once in a while. But we start the year with interviews where they get to talk to each other and write a letter to their parents about their buddy. So they get to talk about their favorite food and their favorite TV show and things like that, just to get to know each other. Then we spend time each month doing different things, like we create books and read books. We do math games. We play like sight word bingo. Typically, it's more kindergarten academics, and third graders are there to help us. We do just some craft activities, and just Dr. Seuss things is an extra special one we throw in for a holiday.
So what I love about Buddies is that we have a chance to work with kindergartners to help them with some of those academic skills, but then they also get to work on their social skills. So my kids get to work on practicing how do you talk to somebody who's younger than you. They also get to work on cutting skills and some skills that we don't get to as often. But then it doesn't just stay in the classroom for buddies. When they're seeing each other throughout the day or at recess, they're always waving to each other, super excited to see each other. And then they will often play at recess together, which is a great way to just have them continue those relationships. And it's really, we're hoping to see that the third graders model the expected behaviors for the kindergartners, so then we can see them as they come through the school that they are continuing to show those expected behaviors. We also just love, as third grade teachers, being able to get to meet our kindergartners, and so we can continue that relationship with them even when they're in first and second grade. So by the time they're at third grade, they know who we are. And the same thing for the kindergarten teachers, they get to keep that relationship with kids that they've had before, and so when they see them in the hallway, it's not a face that they haven't seen in a long time. So
It's interesting how many third graders come back in and they're saying, oh, this room, this is so little. I thought this was so big. Like they'll remember different things from it. So it's kind of fun for them to be back into their kindergarten classroom.
You guys want to go next?
If you want to pass the microphone,
I should-
or you can even take that one out, it's a portable. There you go.
All right, I'm Ashley Moeller. I teach 4th grade at Franklin, and this is my 6th year, and I've done buddies, I think, almost every year since I've been there. So I brought a little sample to show you kind of some of the things that 4th grade has done with their 3rd grade buddy, or 1st grade buddies, excuse me. So, for example, this was a craft that we had done last week, and they have to work on cutting skills, gluing skills, following directions, a step-by-step. Their 4th grade buddies are able to help the 1st graders kind of figure out what they need to do, and then they are able to take a product home to show their families.
And I'm Terry Hungerford, and I'm the 1st grade teacher, and just a lot of what the kindergarten and 3rd grade teachers said. It's good to see the 4th graders being good role models for the 1st graders and getting to do these projects together. So it's just a fun experience for them.
And they're always excited to go to buddies. So if they're like sick, they're like, oh man, I missed it. So.
We also wanted to share about a couple other things that we have in place. One of them is we will often use our 4th graders as mentors for younger students who are maybe having a hard time either outside of school or inside school. We really rely on those peers to be able to comfort them, but also just talk to them. It gives the kids an opportunity to relate to someone who's not a part of their family in a friendly face. A lot of times we will match up 4th graders who maybe need a little more experience talking to different audiences or their own social skills, and we use them to help a kindergartner, for example. We have one a match occurring right now for them to be able to have that older student to relate to and to confide in that. And then the other special thing that we have because of our location is that, Mrs. Goings is going to share about that, is that we have our 2nd graders every year go to the Vets Home. It was an opportunity to visit with another audience and work on their social skills and develop relationships with the veterans.
So I'm Amanda Goings, and I teach second grade at Franklin. I've been there for 13 years. So we, as Mr. Holmgren said, get to go to the Veterans Home every single month, and that's a big incentive for the kids. They always do a really great job as far as using their social skills while we're there. It's a good way for them to practice some of the things that we've taught them in school in a different environment. They always have a really great time working with the veterans. A lot of times they build friendships with the veterans there, so you'll see the kids a lot of times going to the same veteran each time. They've kind of built some relationships and do some helping of those veterans that need extra help. It helps them work on their teamwork skills and things like that. We do different things each month. Sometimes we do a craft, we do bingo. They actually are kind enough to do a picnic for us at the end of the year, where they provide everything for us. We usually have the kids working at tables, so we usually have 1 or 2 veterans per table, and the kids do a really great job of working together with them. It helps them build some empathy, just working with people that may be a little bit different from what kids are used to seeing, so it's a great way for them to build empathy as well.
Do all of the second grades go to the Veterans Home together?
Yes. Yep, and we've actually done it kind of different depending on the year. So when we first began, we actually, or when I first started, we were kind of all together in one group, which was a little overwhelming at times just because there was a lot of things going on. The last 3 years, we've actually done it where each class gets their own floor in the Veterans Home. So we each meet in the activity room of each floor in the DAC building. So we have our same veterans each month, and the kids are really able to build those relationships with that group of veterans.
Any questions from the board members about our Buddies program, either of myself or teacher leaders?
Tim, do you know if more than just Franklin does Buddies? I mean,
Microphone?
Are there other schools that do Buddies too?
Yeah, I'm sure there are. In my previous teaching experience at Anson, we did Buddies. I know there's other buildings that do it as well. They may do it a little differently. They might do it between classrooms at the same grade level, but I'm pretty sure it does happen throughout the district.
Yeah, good.
Thank you very much for sharing with us this evening. Is he ready to go?
I am.
Okay.
Let me go ahead and start.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So my name is John McKenzie. I'm from the AEA, and I've completed a program evaluation for the dual language program in Marshalltown. As you can see on the first slide, I hope you can see that first slide, compared Group 1 to Group 2, and Group 1 was dual language program, and then at some point in time, they were an EL student, and Group 2 was never in the dual language program, but they were also, at some point in time, a dual language or English language learner. And then Group 3 and 4. Group 3, dual language program they were in, but they were never an ELL. And then Group 4, they were never in the dual language program, and they were never an EL student. I just want to take a minute to make it clear that we use the Iowa assessment data in third grade to come up with a control group. So at third grade, the groups that I'm going to be talking about, there was absolutely no difference in the reading score. There was almost an exact identical match, and I was able to do that because of the large number of students in Group 2 and 4, as you can see on the screen. So we started out even at third grade. So here's our null hypothesis. We tested to see if there was any significant difference in reading comprehension, math, and science. I did that at the 0.05 level for groups 2 and 1 and 2. I'm going to skip a couple slides here to kind of get to the chase, but there's the differences in reading, and as you can see, there was only one difference in reading scores across 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th grade. We did the same thing in mathematics. There were 2 significant differences, one in favor of the control group, group 2, and one in favor of the 10th grade group, group 1. In science, we found one significant difference as we ran the comparisons across the results of the Iowa assessments in science. And again, that was in that 10th and 11th grade group. I'm going to skip this and go to slide 9 here. Because there were some differences in that 10th grade group, I ran some more significance tests in reading, math, and science. And the long and short of all those 65 different paired t-tests that I ran, 82% there was no significant difference between groups 1 and 2. And there were significant differences in 13, actually about 14% when you compared groups 1 and 2. So across group 1 and 2, no significant differences. As you look at 86% compared to 14, there was no real patterns across all the 65 paired t-tests that were ran. And remember, I did that at a pretty high significance level at 0.07. The 7 of the 9 significant differences favored group 1, and there were 14 non-significant differences across those groups as well. That's kind of a brief look at the difference between groups 1 and 2. I'm going to go now to groups 3 and 4. We did the same null hypothesis. There are going to be no significant differences in the Iowa assessments in reading, math, and science. We ran those again at the 0.05 level. Here's the outcomes for groups 3 and 4. In reading, there were no significant differences across all those groups, and very little average difference between groups 3 and 4. If you look at the bottom right-hand part of that slide. In mathematics, there was one significant difference, and the rest were not significantly different at all. Part of that was, if you've noticed, the N size. The N size were pretty small with this group in reading, math, and in science. And so I ran it in science, and there was no significant difference. What I did to double check to make sure that there really weren't any is then I went and combined groups. I combined grade groups. I looked at 4th through 6th grade in reading, math, and science, and got a little bit bigger in count of 28 to give us a chance to see if there was really anything different. And for that grades 4 through 6, there was no significant difference in reading, math, or science. I then combined groups grades 7 through 11, and that gave me a pretty good N size as well. We're up to 36, 35 in reading, math, and science. There was one significant difference in reading with that group of 7th through 11th graders, and it produced a fairly good effect size of 0.72, which is almost a full standard deviation. What I did then is I combined all the different tests we ran, combining groups 3 and 4. So there were 2 significant differences favoring students in the dual language program, one in reading and one in math. In the 30 paired t-tests that I ran, only 7% revealed a significant difference between groups 3 and 4, favoring group 3. The other 93% revealed no differences between groups in reading, math, and science on the Iowa assessment scores. And so what we really found with these groups is there was no significant differences across grades in reading, math, and science. We also did like the version 1 last year. In the version 1 last year, we looked at the difference between students' normal curve equivalency scores at 3rd grade, and then we had the same group of students at 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, all the way up to 11th grade. And we found that students, just regardless of the schools they went to or the programs they went to, dual language or ELL, they did significantly better when they got about 5, 6 years out than they did at the baseline of 3rd grade. So I guess my conclusion is it doesn't really matter which programs a student's in, because Marshalltown Community School District is doing a good job of educating these groups of students in reading, math, and science. So because there was no difference, because we wanted to look to see if there was a significant difference across control groups were matched at grade level, we didn't find that. But I want to remind the folks that when we looked at that last year, we saw good things happening in increasing scores on the Iowa assessment from 3rd grade all the way up to 11th grade. And that took about 4 or 5 years, and that's pretty normal to take that amount of time to get dual language or English language learners up to speed and scoring at a pretty good level on the Iowa assessments. So questions you might have? I know I went through that fairly quickly. And I'm looking at I set my stopwatch here, and I'm looking at it, and I'm about right where I wanted to be at this point in time if there were any questions. Or if Lisa wanted to make a comment at this point in time.
Well, I just wanted to give a little background of why are we talking about this. I think maybe we didn't do that at the very beginning, but we're always looking at our student assessment scores, and subgroups are a big factor. And in our district, because of our diversity, we hit that N of 20 for subgroups for reading, math, and science at grades 3 through 11. For many of for English language learners for sure, but also for a lot of the ethnic groups, right, that compose that EL group. And so as we've kind of been here and there working to improve the dual language program at Woodbury, then at Lenahan, and then at Miller, and then they've done quite a bit of work at the high school too to sort of revitalize the dual language program there. It kind of, I was fielding questions from people about, well, how do we know if this even works or if it's making a difference? And on top of that, we were starting to see just a little bit of a surge. I think last year, not this school year, but last school year was the first time that Woodbury had a waiting list of families wanting to get into the program. And then they have a waiting list again this year. And so there were just enough different groups of people wanting to know, like, what do our outcomes look like now that our oldest group in Marshalltown is in juniors?
Already graduated.
Graduated from
Right.
college?
No, graduate. Oh, college?
I think they're juniors.
Like college.
In college, yeah.
No, they graduated, 14 was the last class.
High school?
Yeah, I think so.
Right. I think most of them are enrolled in college at this point. Well, at least the ones that went on to 4-year or 2-year. And so we were trying to say, maybe it's time we dig into this and see, because, we're starting to think about how to is this a program we want to grow? Is this a program that needs to have a little more work done at Lenahan or work done at Woodbury to make it a better program, to get even better outcomes, to match what the national outcomes would be? So that was kind of why we reached out to John. He's a statistical guru. He does awesome stuff for us at the AEA when we asked for his help. And so last year he ran all of this data that Rachel shared with him to show what he just referenced, which is from 3rd grade, and then giving our kids that 5+ years to get to 7th, 8th, and high school scores. We are, doing wonderful things to get kids like moving leaps and bounds from where they're coming in 3rd grade. But then it left more questions, I think, after that initial data review of, that's good to know, but I have specific populations, for example, group 3. So that would be your Marshalltown family who's kind of interested in putting their kid at Woodbury, but their kid's an English speaker. Maybe they're not sure if they're going to fit in there, if this is the right fit for them. They don't have any other language at home but English, and they want to be sure their kid's not going to fall behind because of being in the dual language program, spending a percentage of their time learning in Spanish. So that was what group 3 was, and we wanted to compare that group to all the other parents in the community that say, well, that's nice, but that's not for us. We're going to pick the other 5 schools and learn in English only. So that was one match, and that's why the N was so small, because we really don't have a lot of people that take advantage of, that are English-only speakers that take advantage of the program at Woodbury. And then the other one was we wanted to see from Rachel's view, too, is how are our kids that are ever EL doing with the EL program, pull-out services, push-in, co-teaching, all that kind of stuff we do at the other 5 schools. How are they faring on these Iowa assessments compared to the kids who don't have as much time to be speaking, listening, reading, and writing in English because they're in Spanish at dual language at Lenahan and Miller and Woodbury? So that would be your groups 1 and 2.
So I think this is awesome, doing this data. I was that parent who said, boy, this would be really cool for my kids to do, but they're going to get slowed down in all the other stuff, so we're not going to enroll them there, right? And so this sort of debunks that myth, right? And so it seems to me we ought to shout this stuff from the rooftops to every parent in the county that we offer this and others don't, and your kid's going to get just as good an education in all of the other subjects as well. I think that's important, really good, positive news.
That was kind of our takeaway after this meeting. I said, wow, this is something that we really need to come up with, like a one-sheeter kind of thing that we can give people, you know. A lot of people call Woodbury and want a tour, or want to visit, or different things. But just something we can post on our website that we can share with families, that this would be even more layman's terms probably, but just so parents could understand what would a common day look like for their child, and what kind of outcomes have we seen with kids that maybe look like or have the same backgrounds or present as the same non-English learners in the dual language program.
Yeah, why is our school district better than all the others around it?
Right.
I mean, this is something that, Andrew, are you listening? We ought to shine a very bright light on this very frequently.
Yeah, this is hot off the press, so Andrew hasn't even maybe heard about it yet.
I think that not only does it affirm the successful efforts at Woodbury, our dual language school, which is, I think is still one of 6 or 7 in the state, but it also is commending all of our staff across the schools in terms of the levels of growth that they're seeing with the students. As Lisa said, many of our kids, come in with some barriers to learning and success as it relates to a raw score at a particular period of time. But in terms of the growth that we're seeing from them, particularly those who are with us for an extended period of time, I think it's really affirming. And it kind of lends itself to the question, depending on interest, is the dual language program something we should consider in the future to try to look to expand, maybe to another elementary school site?
I think, too, another thing that is not mentioned in this data set but is worth mentioning is that this doesn't, and we don't in any standardized way measure how much Spanish the kids are learning. We're starting to be able to look at it because when they're in 8th grade, we're starting to be able to put them in different levels of world language experiences at the high school. And then with the Seal of Biliteracy, we're going to get some more information about kids and their language abilities. But, I think you have to take it with a grain of salt, too, that these kids that were in group 1, I think, if I remember correctly, they are achieving these levels on the English assessment while simultaneously growing in Spanish, too. So they're doing 2 things at the same time in 2 different languages.
Would you put up John's quote, please, which is also a summary statement for us?
So I think several of us that are on the board here ran for being on the school board, at least in part due to issues with open enrollment and how to fix open enrollment. We just last week went through a enrollment projections for the district over the next 10 years that kind of basically look like, oh, we're pretty flat, So this looks to me like ways to try and get more parents choosing this district because it's better than the other districts, and here's a very demonstrable way to do that. I can't think of too many things I've seen in my time on the board that shine a more, here we are, we're better than this one. And it ought to be used to try and capture more kids whose parents are making different choices.
Can you tell at all now, I mean, this is probably maybe something else to look at, is there any indication that this helps college readiness for some of these kids coming through, maybe coming from subgroup 1 and 2, from families that maybe haven't been in college to then maybe, because now we have four-year grads that have been through the program, and I realize the program's changed over time.
Mm-hmm.
It's gotten better. But that would be kind of interesting.
Yeah, I think it'd be interesting to use our infinite campus system to try to keep an alumni group, so to speak, of that'd be a great research project for someone who's working on a dissertation or something like that,
Yeah.
to go talk to those kids and compare them and see if they felt more prepared, and hopefully, we're not, we're counseling them in ways that maybe they want to pick up French when they're in high school then, or maybe they want to do
Is it in
different
America?
things. Are the three of you in the dual language program? No? Yeah. But I think, it's kind of on us then to start to think about how to keep it appealing to kids at middle school and high school so that they're not feeling like they have to choose between being in honors classes or being in dual language classes or those types of challenges that sometimes as we grew the program up through the system or meeting highly qualified teachers. I mean, there's a lot of things to think about when you work with a specialized program like this, but there's a lot of just really awesome things that come out as a side, benefit of it too.
Any questions for John before we lose him?
Thank you. I was going to say too, thank you, John. I don't know if I got a chance to tell you that on Zoom last week, it was one of our weather days, so we were all trying to just get through the weather.
Any other, pardon me?
Thank you. Yep.
Thank you very much, ladies and John.
Mr. Epperly?
We are now on 5.01.
Okay, we'll talk about the budget summary first. And you may have questions, so you can ask any questions you like. So the top portion of this, the contract that was awarded to Ball Team for the construction was $6,686,000. Industry standard for change orders from all different types of change orders for public schools is 5 to 10%. Our company's average is 2 to 3%, but we knew we had a tight budget, so we took a pretty aggressive recommendation when we recommended your contingency that you should hold. It's about 1.5% is what we suggested at the time of the award, because as you know, we had a concern on the budget. So we recommended you have a contingency of $100,580. We've had one change order so far that included numerous items. That totaled $15,430 in additional cost. And we are recommending approval for the second change order tonight. That includes 12 items. 2 of those are credits, 10 of them are ads, many different types of things. Those total $30,576. So you can see the addition of those is a little over, just barely over $46,000. So that the next section down kind of shows you what we have been asked to approve and review through change requests from the contractor, proposal requests sent from us and the district. Those change requests and proposal requests that Ball Team has requested from the district totaled $150,000. 46,006 is the total of the 2 change orders that we have approved, and 104,575 so far is what we've rejected or negotiated away. So their track record is that we're approving about 1/3 of what they asked for. We have outstanding change items that they're requesting about $95,000. As we have reviewed those items, the design team believes that about $32,907 are valid of those items. There is at least one other possible item that may come in addition to this that we're aware of, that I just heard about today, that might be requested by a code official. Maybe, maybe not. They have the ability to ask for whatever they want to ask for. I suspect that as we close out the project here soon, hopefully, there'll be a few more of those. We are aware of 2 more credit items where the district should get a credit back. And at the end of the project, we always do a very thorough review of the documents to make sure that nothing slipped through the crack and there isn't anything out there that didn't get done or didn't need to get done, and we get a credit for those items. But the total of what we expect to see is about 79,000 of the 100,580. It may approach that 100,000, but we feel pretty comfortable that we're going to be within your contingency for that amount.
So the one you said you just heard about today, is that included in the?
No, it is not in these
It's
numbers.
not in these numbers.
I have no idea what that number might be.
Okay.
Or even what the scope of it might be. I'm not really prepared to talk about it today.
Well, and I want to thank Kevin and his team for diligently evaluating and in many cases rejecting some of the change requests that have been proposed and going back to the table to try to figure out more cost-effective or efficient ways of getting some of these things done. I've been engaged with a lot of that through the bi-monthly meetings, but have been particularly engaged, I'd say, over the last month in lieu of
Mr. Springer.
Mr. Springer's absence. So I've been able to, or have chosen to become very engaged in a lot of those detailed discussions as of late, and we'll continue to do what we need to do to make sure this project closes within budget. We had as I know members of the Facilities Committee knew, a pretty tight budget to begin with, given we cut back on a lot of what the original plan was in order to stay within the budget. And as Kevin said, probably an appropriate contingency, but definitely a tight one that we'd have to monitor everything that came through in the form of a change order. And it really wasn't until a month ago or so that we even got into the change order process, because of being able to successfully stay within the original budget and the allowances that were given the various trades. So hopefully we're within a month or 2 of getting this project closed out and on track for the budget.
We expect to have only one more change order. That's our expectation. So we don't expect to process one until April. because we know there's concrete work that needs to be done and asphalt work that needs to be done, and that will not be accomplished most probably in March. It may be the end of April before that is done. So sometime in May is probably the next time we'll be back to kind of give you the final budget update.
How do the floors look?
The wood floors look
Yeah.
great. They're taping the wood floor today. Matter of fact, they just finished so that they can put the striping down tomorrow.
Awesome.
I think my son told me they were going to have their first wrestling practice in the wrestling room today.
I was there for the wrestling practice. I can show you photographs. Kids are pretty darn excited.
Yeah,
There
yeah.
were a couple parents there that were excited as well.
Yeah.
So yes, believe they filled it. They are very happy. Yeah.
Questions for Kevin?
Thank you.
No, thank
Okay.
you.
We do need to have a motion to approve the change order as presented. May I have a motion to do that?
So moved.
Second.
Carter Hernandez, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. Motion carries 7-0.
Okay. Thanks.
Thank you. Student board rep.
Do our students have a presentation for us?
Hello.
It's nice to see all three of you.
Yes. Okay, so today we have this beautiful presentation for you guys. So the first thing we want to talk about is the district speech contest that was held on January 24th. So many students qualified for the state speech contest that was held February 2nd at Cedar Rapids Kennedy High School. And the team is coached by Jocelyn Frohwein, which she's right over there to my left, and Grant Gale. And Evan Roberts serves as manager and Phoebe Osgood as captain. So this is just a quick stencil of what kind of performances were going on. And there's a lot of things that go on, like ensemble acting, group mime, musical theater, improv, and short film. And in the middle section, you can see the members of each category. And to your right, there's division ratings. And there were 3 judges, and they each received a score of what division they were in. So the ones highlighted, all ones, means that they have a probability of being nominated for All-State.
And we just heard only musical theater got non-performing All-State.
Okay, musical theater is going. So also, MHS competed in the Iowa Science Bowl. 5 MHS students competed in Ames on January 26 in the Science Bowl, and they advanced to top 16 out of 40 teams. And the bowl tests students' knowledge in all areas of science and math. And if you don't know what the bowl, the questions consisted of, they consisted of a range of science disciplines, including biology, chemistry, earth science, physics, energy, and math. And it's fast-paced question and answer format. And it's coached by ELP teacher Susan Fritzell. And the members are Austin Christian, Jacob Swartz, Trevor Ketchum, Zach Swartz, and Marcus Barker. Yeah.
This past Saturday, it was the boys swimming district meet, and this year the boys swimming team has been very successful. They have a 7-2 record, and they placed second at districts. At the meet, 9 swimmers qualified for state, and this was the most state qualifiers since 2007. Additionally, the 200-yard freestyle relay set a new Bobcat record, and the past record was set in 2005, so that was very exciting. Something exciting going on in the classroom right now is Mrs. Emerson's Spanish 4 class is presenting cooking projects, and these presentations are 25 minutes long. And not only do the students have to teach how to make something, they also have to make it a skit and add a theme to it. So some examples of the themes are a birthday party, the Super Bowl, a cooking show, and prison hacks. There's people who are pretending to be prisoners, and they're making some Kool-Aid chicken, I think, and it'll be interesting. So Stella and Shakira were 2 girls who went today, and they did a good job. Right now, NHS is running a community-wide book drive. We're collecting books for 3rd grade students, and we organized box locations all around town, so there's the full list of books. And our goal is to donate a book to every 3rd grader in town. And once we collect the books, we want to personally deliver the books to the students and read to them and talk to them why reading is important. So the drive continues until February 15th.
Okay, so we have some upcoming events, starting with the play auditions for Sherlock Holmes. It will be in the auditorium on Tuesday, I think tomorrow, at 4. And also we have some athletic activities like bowling will be this Friday, and girls and boys basketball will be February 7th, 11th, 12th, and 15th at the Lenahan and the Roundhouse varsity starting at 7:45. And that's it. Any questions?
I have to say, every week or every meeting, you put our staff on report to do as fabulous a presentation as you do each time. Thank you very much for your efforts.
Thank you.
Mrs. Wyatt.
Thanks for your patience as we juggled the agenda.
Not even sure if I have a car here, so. So once again, it's that time of year when the students are beginning to look at next year, whether it's completing college applications or signing up for classes at the high school, including our young 8th graders. They started their 4-year plans today. So it's a pretty exciting time as we still have 15 weeks of this semester to go, but we're already talking about next year. So some of the highlights in this year's course guide include that the RAI, or Regents Admissions Index, has been changed. Because so many schools in Iowa now exclude class ranks, that used to be part of the formula. And so for the past several years, RAI has been running 2 different formulas for schools that have a class rank and for schools that do not. So this group of seniors is the first group of students who will use the primary score, which takes out the class rank. So that's been featured on page 9 in the course guide, so that students who want to know how to calculate their RAI score, they can also go to a website and plug in different pieces of information to kind of see if they're hitting that 245, which is a guarantee to get into one of the local public or the state public schools. So as you can see there, depending on the ACT score, high school grade point average, and the number of core classes that they're taking at the high school. So while they're required to take 13 core classes at the high school, we want to see them take more than just the 13. And as you'll recall, this group of seniors is the first group of seniors who will not have the automatic dismiss because they're seniors. They have to do some things like work-based learning experiences or an internship or take college classes out at MCC. So we'll see how that fares, but they have an opportunity to have more of those core subjects in their RAI score. Also featured in this year's course guide on page 20 through 23 is individual 4-year plans by class. As we have been challenged by the state to change our graduation requirements, and sometimes changes are made within departments. Do you see it there? Go a little further. Yeah, there we go. That's the first one. And so we want to make sure that students have the right picture of the courses that can take, because sometimes a course may phase out, like pre-algebra, for example. But that was a course that our current seniors were able to take all through their 4 years, which was not available to other students. So we want to make sure there's a clear picture of the courses that are available for them and will remain available for them throughout the 4 years that they're at the high school. With the governor's requirement for financial literacy still on the table, we have done some realignment of some curriculum. So on page 32 is the business course that used to be called financial literacy. Ms. Nelson, Lupi, and the staff here at MLA have beefed up the curricular requirements in that financial literacy, and we are using the state required name in the business department, consumer econ and personal finance. This will satisfy that financial literacy requirement for our current 9th, 10th, and 11th grade students, and many of them are currently enrolled in that course. Other new courses include on page 34 in the business department, entrepreneurship. Mrs. Lewis is looking forward to helping students understand starting their own business, which with JA going on in our lower grades fits perfect into that curriculum, and they'll be doing something at the high school, probably around a coffee shop or something like that. Then in PE on page 74, with that fabulous pool that we are bringing back a PE class focused on aquatics. So we'll see how many students elect to have that one. I imagine that's going to run first thing in the morning so they can get that shower and get out of the pool right away. In the science department on page 80, we have a new course called Astronomy. Again, that's a science elective which fits into that RAI score of adding another core class. Also on page 81, they've asked to add geology. So try to think of some new ways to engage students in their learning. On page 84, in the social studies department, adding another AP class, AP Human Geography, an advanced level class for our 9th grade students, which would take place of advanced world history. The incoming class is the first group who will be required to take on page 85, Iowa Financial Literacy course, which again is comparable to that course I mentioned before, Consumer Economics and Personal Finance, except this one, it's just it's a crazy little deal with certifications with teachers. So this one can be taught by the social studies teachers in particular, or math teachers. Also on page 88 is American National Government, which is a MCC course, which will fulfill a government credit, which is a requirement of the Marshalltown Community School District and the state. On page 91 is Western Civilization 1 and 2. Again, those would be elective courses. They are MCC courses that would be offered on campus. Marshalltown High School is very fortunate to have so many staff members with advanced degrees and master credit hours in their specific content areas to be able to offer the classes right on campus for our students, so they don't have to drive anywhere. And we have a lot of students taking advantage of those opportunities. That's something that they can be thankful to the Marshalltown Community School District Board for making available to them. In alignment with Bobcat Ready on page 94 are independent work-based learning experiences. So students who have a job and work 67.5 credits or more can earn credits up to 4 credits. And if you scroll down just a little bit further, Paulette, this will be an active link on multiple places, but there's the evaluation form that the students will have to submit so that the employer can evaluate them based on their soft skills, or what are called 21st century skills. And this form was developed, and Dr. Schutte has talked about this before, in conjunction with several business partners that we have in the district, employers like Hy-Vee and Fairway. Okay, and that's new. Typically, many students work jobs and do not earn any high school credit for that. Also on page 94 is our internship. Again, that's one of those opportunities for students to be out and practicing and learning more about career fields that they have an interest in. On page 104, last year, the board graciously allowed us to bring IJAG into the district, one at Miller Middle School, program at Miller Middle School, and one at the high school. Well, those middle school students are now advancing to the high school, so we have to have that next course, IJAG 910, will be added to the high school with another instructor. And then finally, in our World Languages Department, on page 107, is AP French, and on page 110 is AP Spanish. So we've added 3 AP courses to our opportunities at the high school. It is awesome. Any questions?
So was the Western Div class college credit?
Yes, ma'am.
Nice.
Mhm.
So we talked about a weighted GPA for recognizing the honors or dual credit, and I don't see that shown.
You're right. We did talk about weighted GPA, and Mr. Miller came to those meetings as the staff talked about weighted GPA, and we did some fooling around with some of the students' GPAs. We probably could have gone further in exploring how that would impact it at the top of the class, and we did that with the class from about 2 years ago. It just barely changed the order of students. If we had dug maybe deeper down to the top 50 kids, maybe that would have, but we didn't do that, Mr. Harris. But our faculty felt strongly that at this time with the 12-point coming in, we're not sure how that's going to impact kids as it is right now.
By 12-point, you mean crediting pluses and minuses?
Correct. Yes, so A minus does not, it's a 3.67, and an A or an A plus are 4.0.
I apologize, I stepped out for a minute. Did you talk at all about the discussions that we've been having about the construction trades with MCC and the potential for that also to be an option?
Well, that's rolling pretty fast. I did talk to the instructor as well, potential instructor as well, to see if, because he has a great way of building relationships with students. But let me back up a little bit by saying we have a Foods 3 class at the high school that meets 2 hours every single day. And in that class, we call it Foods 3, but they take a variety of MCC culinary classes like knife skills, baking, and safety certification. So what MCC is proposing is that there be 2 sessions out at MCC with a construction expert, one in the morning for about 3 hours and one in the afternoon for another 3 hours, each group containing about 15 kids from Marshalltown and the surrounding school districts. And then in collaboration with the city and a lot of other entities invested in Marshalltown, this group of students would work with this instructor and some other subcontractors to build a single-story home here in Marshalltown that would then be sold locally by our local realtor. So there's a lot of footwork that we have to do to get that up and running, but it ensures that students understand that they're in school for that 3 hours, excuse me, in the morning, or 3 hours in the afternoon. And then their college credits would come into play later.
We've been talking about this for quite some time, probably well over a year to 2 years. And so we're excited that MCC's come up with a plan to try to get it back off the ground, especially in lieu of the fact that they had built a facility to accommodate it, and then it was dropped shortly after due to lack of interest or participation. There's definitely interest on the city's behalf, both in terms of available properties that could be utilized in order to build the new structures, as well as interest in making sure that whatever is built is in line with what the recent housing studies have said are needed. So a more moderate to lower income type of dwelling, most likely a duplex or as Jackie said, probably a single level structure. Part of the challenge, I think, in the past is that as more and more success was had building houses, the houses became more and more complex, resulting in more time, more effort, and for whatever reason, the district and MCC having less success in terms of gaining student interest to go into those areas or to follow through on what they needed to do or to successfully complete it. So we're really trying to build, no pun intended, from the ground up with the idea that take off a reasonable project, build interest, capacity, success, and celebration of that in hopes that it'll continue to grow over time. But the course's inception will be highly contingent on us and the other districts successfully filling those seats in order to accommodate the additional staff that's going to be needed at MCC.
Jackie, is the metals and machining classes still, are they still there? Sorry. The machining and metals?
Absolutely,
Still
they're
there?
still going at the high school,
Okay.
yes.
Good.
Other questions for Jackie or Dr. Schutte? May I have a motion to approve the tiny little 2019-2020 Marshalltown High School course guide as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Fletcher Carter, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 7-0. Now it's time.
Yep, Tim, come on up.
To gather around. Join us, Mr. Holmgren, Mr. Kretzinger, Dr. Stevenson. One more chapter after this one. It's kind of like that tiny little course guide.
I think Chapter 8, Responding When Kids Don't Learn, is probably one of the more significant chapters within the book in terms of explaining how highly effective PLC can help make a positive difference as it relates to student achievement. And as we've done in the recent past, I'd open it up to comments or questions that any of the board members or administrators in attendance would have as it relates to what were those things that kind of stuck out to you as you were reading this chapter.
What are we doing right and what are we doing wrong?
Oh, if we knew that, we could go on circuit and make lots of money as speakers.
They pointed it out pretty specifically in this chapter.
I'm going to say that I've probably been a part of many of those attempts and changes that have been done to increase student achievement. And last year, I came here to the board and with some students, and we talked about our what is called E&R at the high school. It's an enrichment period, but it's also an MTS designed period in the day where we took what is homeroom time during the school day. And I think that my buy-in from staff is that they have given up 2 minutes off their class time to build this 25-minute period a day so that they can specifically target students and pull them in and provide them with supplemental help. And I think we've got that buy-in. Now we have to quit chasing homework and start focusing on skills. But I think it's been a good thing for the high school.
Do you have the numbers yet to support it?
Microphone.
Do you have the numbers yet to support it?
I do. I can share that at another time, but I'm constantly looking at that, how many students have received an intervention. And this first semester, I think I shared a couple weeks ago that we provided over 9,000 interventions to students.
Okay, the one word that stood out to me when I read this, I keep talking about the storm like it was some traumatic, but prior to the bad weather the last couple weeks, was on page 174, I think it is, where they talk about randomness, and that was the thing that stuck out to me. I've been working on MTSS or RTI systems for about 10 years as an administrator, and I can't tell you how often I would hear, well, we're going to try this, and this will help here, and this will help there. That's random. If I can't guarantee to a parent that their child has access between bell to bell to an opportunity for intervention or enrichment, then why are we doing it? Then we become the bullet list on page 172. Do you see what I'm saying? And so that's the one thing that I'm kind of excited about what we're doing with ESSA, because what Anson and Rogers have done already, they've completed this SAMI, this self-study of this exactly. So on any given day, if I'm struggling as a third grader in math or a second grader in reading or in behavior even, what supports do we have in the school day that don't mean you have to miss band lessons or you're going to get kept out of recess, or, when are we going to carve out time that is guaranteed accessible to all kids? They're not going to miss their special ed minutes, and it is tough. It is really tough. She said 2 minutes from each period, each teacher's day, but it looks a little bit different at K4, obviously, or 5-6, to get people to say too that, we need a chunk of time. We need a 20-minute block for reading or a 20-minute block for math. And during that time, it's all hands on deck. And we're going to figure out how to get kids to be able to do blank, whatever skill it is. And, it's that mindset of, but then I'm not going to have enough minutes to teach reading, or I'm not going to have enough minutes for my math block. But the idea is over time, you're going to not need all that time because of all the reteaching that you're doing during that time. You're going to have back because we're going to cover that during intervention time. So it's believing in carving out time and doing the legwork during that time will buy you more time in the big picture. And that's tough, and that falls on us as administrators to make the system not random.
What stuck out to me the most was over and over again it talked about high quality initial instruction. And so when you think about the core instruction that every kid gets, it's just that important. If your core instruction is off, you're going to be having to intervene on the part of kids who need remediation over and over and over again. So our district's focus on SIOP, for example, some of those things that are broad range where it impacts all kids, to me, is where we get our best bang for our buck, is making sure that the teachers that are leading our classrooms are as highly effective and highly trained as possible.
Well, I think going back to that initial bolted list, I think what the book was trying to say is these things aren't in and of themselves bad, but in and of themselves, there's no magic bullet in terms of one bullet to improve student achievement. So you can't just do one of those logistical changes like change your schedule or what have and expect necessarily to see significantly different results. And so I know one of the things that was referenced in the book and certainly referenced at the PLC summits that many of our teacher leaders and administrators have gone to is reference to John Hattie's work on visible learning, and where they did a meta-analysis of about 250 different instructional strategies or initiatives, et cetera, some of which are in that bulleted list, and we're able to show the effect size as it relates to student achievement. And I'll forward you that link or that PDF just so that you can look through it. And again, they would condition that by saying, we're not saying these things are bad, but based on many research studies, this is the kind of impact on student achievement you could expect by that in and of itself. So it's an interesting thing to look at, and kind of, as you alluded to, Janelle, it kind of makes you stand back going, oh, some of these things that maybe we've done over time do not have necessarily the research-based to prove it's going to make a significant difference. And then there's some other things that can make a real significant difference, one of which would be relationship building, which we heard a little bit of from Tim and his staff today with the Buddies program and the mentoring program and that sort of thing.
Other comments?
She might kill me, but I'm going to share it anyway. As some of you may recall, I have a daughter who is a second grade teacher in this district. And so it is just delightful to listen to her talk about planning with her teammates in her school and how they sort kids out to work on skills. And, you know, sometimes she may complain, sometimes I always have to work with the lowest level students. But, you know, I just remind her gently that you're making a difference in that achievement gap early on, and this is the right work. So it's fun to listen to her, she's a PLC lead, and listen to her talk about the work that they're doing at second grade and how they collaborate around the very thing that we're talking about in this book study. So it is making a difference, and by allowing teachers to experience PLCs, we're going to make a difference in our kiddos.
Question for the principals. One of the items listed in the book was that we needed to have assessments that provided the right information to our teachers so that they could plan accordingly and look at causes for deficiencies. Do we have the right tests?
Well, we don't have any control over the state tests. Sorry, we don't have any control over that.
Do we have the right formatives?
But formatively, yes, our teachers
Tests.
are writing the right kinds of tests. I believe they are. Yeah.
That's a good example of building the plane while you're, building the plane while you're flying it. Because we are building the common formative math assessments for math, elementary for sure. As we speak, there's a team that does that, and teachers give input, and we're going to look at them again in April when we get back together to see what needs to be changed. Our literacy system does not have them. It's a glaring missing element in our elementary literacy program, and it's come up in our SAMI work and our ESSA work and differentiated accountability and everything else. So we are definitely going to be tackling that with our piloting work that we're doing next school year in literacy. We do formative assessments in the sense that classroom teachers do running records. They listen to kids read and they look at their reading accuracy. And then depending on where they fall on the FAST assessment, they might have to do progress monitoring, where weekly they're checking in to check on their words per minute. But in terms of identifying the essential standards, which we read about a few chapters ago, and then identifying how we're going to assess those essential standards, that's not in place with our elementary literacy program here. But we're working on it.
We have feedback from Lexia as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
The use of Lexia.
Yeah, we do. Our digital learning platforms give us feedback, give teachers feedback, kids too, when they get stuck and when they need some reteaching.
B, I think the most powerful assessment that we have right now are the ones that the teachers do on the spot. So, right, following instructions so that they know which way they need to go. Which kid needs this, which kid needs that. And so we utilize everything our curriculum provides, and also the district's providing some of those common formative assessments. However, in my opinion, the most powerful one is the one the teacher does on the spot with the kids, to really get an idea of, did they understand or can they demonstrate what I tried to teach them today? And if not, what am I going to do about it? Lisa mentioned earlier the amount of collaboration, and so did Jackie, that we're seeing within our teachers in the elementary level at the area of math, because right now our PLC work is focused in the area of math. And it's so powerful to see a team of professionals sitting down and not just talking about their kids, but talking about our kids and what we can do to help each of them grow where they need to go.
The data wall helps.
Yeah, The data wall's there. We have, I guess in the area of literacy, one thing that we have in literacy that we don't in math is we do have data wall. We have opportunities to talk about core instruction and what our kids need based on their assessment data with their screenings. And then we have interventionist meetings. So those folks who are in the position to provide the intervention to our students, we every 4 to 6 weeks get together with our classroom teachers and those interventionists, individual classroom teachers with the interventionist, the principals, and the instructional coach. And we talk about what's going well. What support do you need? What does this kid need to be able to experience the growth that we want he or she to achieve?
Have we not adopted a learning management system recently that'll be able to be used to capture those formative assessments?
The cat is now out of the bag. Thank you, Dr. Schutte. Yeah, we've been working with a team to identify a learning management system for our high school staff to utilize that. I mean, talk about personalized learning. That will be essentially the outcome of that is kids can have anywhere, anytime access to feedback from teachers at a higher level than possibly what Google Classroom does. So I think that's another way where, at least from an administrator point of view, you can pull data on formative assessments at any time to see what's going on in all the algebra classes on this equation standard that they're working on. And we're kind of getting to that point now where with math too at the elementary level. So it's pretty exciting. I mean, today was a no preschool day. I spent the morning with our preschool teachers. They were working on how to look at language, how to develop oral language with our little ones. And to see them as a PLC too, looking with the paras at, breaking it down between, well, this kid can kind of answer yes or no questions, and this kid is asking other kids yes or no questions, and, all the different, so that they see the skills, and then they have to dig in and see how they're going to respond when the kids, for the kids that can't do that yet, and that's an expectation in kindergarten, what are we going to do between now and May to help that child get there? It's just it's been interesting to watch all the teams. We also have non-core PLCs working on this, music, art, all of those teams. They don't get the opportunity to meet as frequently as the classroom teachers do, and we're going to work on that for next year. But I think that is going to go a long way too in seeing how our programs develop in the non-core over time.
Other comments, questions for the hot seats?
I kind of have one. So there's a kind of two different assessments going on, because the teacher's got it, we've always assigned grades at the end, and, you're trying to stop chasing that end grade. But at the same time, there has to come a point where parents want to see that end grade, and that's been an issue, as some of this has changed. So where is that, and how is that going? Because the formative assessments, I understand, those are really critical because you have to keep promoting that growth throughout the year. And the teachers have traditionally assigned that end grade, which the parents want to see. But now the parents are still going to want to see that last year we've still got all the information, we still made the grade. So how is that?
Well, at the high school, Mr. Miller and Karina can also answer this question, but grades are posted every 3 weeks, so tomorrow is in one of those 3-week periods where it has to be done so that it becomes more solid. But at any time, and it changes to green in Infinite Campus when parents are looking in the portal. But at any time when it's yellow, that's in progress. So now it's changing just a little bit, and we're working towards the 6-week grade, and you can continue to watch that. But it also gives that semester grade right there. Where are you at right now? And you can watch it change from 3 to 6 to 9 to 12, 15, and then finally that 18. You can continuously watch that. If you're asking how will parents know what are those things that are going to impact their grade as the weeks go along, and well, that's that guaranteed curriculum, which is often provided at the high school level in the syllabus. Getting my high school people to put things in there way in advance. It might be in Google Classroom, which is not always accessible to the parent, but it may, and not necessarily visible in Infinite Campus because teachers can turn on and off when kids can see certain things in there. The learning management system that Lisa just talked about, Canvas, what's really nice about that is when a student takes a test in Canvas, it gives them the score right away. It also gives you, the parent, an opportunity to see how long it took your student to take that test. So one of my children back in the day had Canvas, and I asked him, you got a 46% on here, and it says it took you 9 minutes to take this test. Do you think that might be the problem? That it took you 9 minutes, right, to take this test? And then the teacher has the capabilities of resetting those right away if they want to give them an opportunity to try again. And they also can read and provide little audio recordings for students who maybe need to have tests read to them, because that's another challenge for teachers when you have a group of students who need to have a test read to them. It's part of their IEP accommodations or 504 accommodations. And maybe you have a para who can do that with you, and maybe you don't. And so now you're having to figure out how to group your kids so you can read the test. Well, in my previous district, the teacher can put all the recordings in there and read the test out loud. Students put on their headphones, and we all know they have them, right? They put them on, and then anybody in the class could have the test read to them. It was okay. It worked out great. So there's a lot of wonderful things that can happen in addition to having this item analysis by formative assessment right away at your fingertips as an administrator to see how they're using their data to make a difference.
What I would share with you about the elementary levels, we look at formative assessment a little differently. We look at formative assessment as assessment for learning, not of learning. And so when you make the jump in talking about grades and formative assessment, I kind of cringe a little bit because that's not the way that we utilize that.
Right, I'm
And
just
so-
saying that there's a big difference.
There-
And
there
I
is.
see that, but there's different perspectives as well. So I understand the differences, but you
Yeah.
still are going to have the rest of the world looking at those
Yeah.
final numbers.
Well, when you think about the standards-based report card at the elementary level, we use the same terminology that Mrs. Wyant's referring to with the in progress. And so a lot of the conversations we have with our elementary parents is that our report card, our progress report, is based on end-of-the-year standards. And so it's natural that you're going to see your child having an in progress in their mid-year progress report because they are allowed to progress through that all the way through the end of the year.
I understand, I think what you're asking, Janelle, is how do we keep parents informed when we're saying, we're working on it, we're working on it, we're working on it, and then, they don't want a surprise at the end of the year, like, oh, we worked, but your child still didn't get it. And so we are constantly asking ourselves, like, should these chapter tests be sent home or not sent home? Should these quizzes be sent home or not sent home? How do we keep parents in the loop about what skills their kids are working on? Parent-teacher conferences helps, obviously, because they can show work to parents at those 2 times. But there's parents that want to be more involved than that. And so that's something that I think our teachers do a really good job of bringing up to their coaches and principals all the time of, we're getting, questions from parents or emails from parents about, I don't know why my child can't do blank yet, and I don't know, we don't see any math papers. And so we're kind of working on what is a system are we going to agree should go home, should not go home. And, yeah, with our new curriculum, I don't think we have that quite figured out yet.
I'd agree.
Anything else? Thank you very much for joining us. The last chapter, Chapter 9, is an interesting read. Next time.
I don't want any spoilers. Sounds ominous.
Pardon me?
Sounds ominous.
No, it wasn't meant to be. We're over to you, Paulette.
All right. Before you tonight, we have a resolution for our depositories. This is something that the board is asked to approve annually, and we're just making a slight update to ours right now. In the past, I think the resolution has been kind of a blanket. It's been $35 million for all depositories, but we're making it specific to each depository with this resolution. So the 3 that you see listed there are current depositories that we use right now, so.
Questions for Paulette?
So we have the investment trust, which we've talked about in the finance committee, but do you want to expound on that a little bit for the rest of the board? Because you do a better job than I would. But then also, then why Bankers Trust?
Bankers Trust is actually on there because when we issue debt, such as you did last December, all of that flows through Bankers Trust. So that's why we have Bankers Trust on there. It's not that we have daily cash at Bankers Trust. That is for debt purposes.
Okay.
And then the Iowa School Joint Investment Trust is another vehicle that we have available to us. They have some different opportunities for interest earnings than our local banks, so.
And then obviously Great Western is our local bank.
Great Western is our local bank.
I just wanted to make that clear.
Yes.
Other comments? May I have a motion to approve the depository resolution as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Carter Heitman, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 7-0. Mr. Kretzinger, we're back to you.
So what we have here before you is that we are part of a number of consortiums. A consortium is a group of districts who partner together to provide services to students that are considered what we call low incidence. So you don't find a lot of students with this variety of special needs. For this situation, we're looking to work with an organization called Grandwood. It's in the Woodward Community School District area. And what Grandwood does is it works with kids who have really significant intellectual disabilities as well as really intensive behavioral needs. It's a very unique child who has this multitude of needs. And so within our own district, we do not have staff with the knowledge or training to do that. Grandwood does, so we work with them and have our student attend school there. Part of a consortium is that the districts who are make up that group have to share some of the administrative costs of that. And so our portion of the administrative costs for the principal of the program is $2,766.24. So that's why we're asking for your approval. Paulette, do you have anything to add?
You did great.
So if we have a student open enroll out, we initially get the funding from the state, and then we have to pay that district, right? In this case, are we doing that, and this is above that 6,000, whatever the number is that we would get from the state for the student, or not?
So in this case, we can actually districts can bill each other for actual costs.
Okay.
And since this is a consortium, it's really our program. It's the program of all these districts together, so they have gone before the school budget review committee to get approval to have administrative costs be special ed.
Understand.
Because typically they are not a special ed cost. So we're just getting approval.
Yep, I'm with you there.
Yep.
So this student, we would send the general 1.0 dollars as well as the special ed weighted funds to this district
So it's
to support the
above.
needs.
Okay.
And we might get billed for more than the funding. Yeah, we have to pay the actual
Understand.
costs.
I was just
Yep.
wondering if it was in it or above and beyond.
It
Got
is.
it.
Other questions? Could I have a motion to approve the application to the School Budget Review Committee in the amount of $2,766.24?
So moved.
Second.
Fletcher Harris, All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
6.01, district policy on public participation in board meetings. We pulled out separately from the other policies in response to the discussion at the last meeting and Director Miller's request. We'll share this one if you'll just pass those down. What I have before you, and these policies are just for review purposes as they were put on here. The 204.10, which I'm recommending be converted to 213 R1 is what our community participation in board meetings policy has been. What I had put before you here was to change it from policy to regulation, because as it reads, it is regulations versus a policy with some minor changes, because some of that language I think is outdated. And then 213, public participation in board meetings, is the model IASB policy for public participation in board meetings, which is consistent with what our practice has been. Through news and notes, I also provided you some information from the IASB website that helped provide, I think, some guidance as to why in the public participation portion of the meeting, the board is highly encouraged not to respond to those comments that come before you or us as administration for the first time. In their information, they share that many boards choose to share that the position up front as it relates to either embedding within their board agenda as we do, the statement that's made by the board president preceding the public comment portion. So we both listed in the agenda, we state it verbally prior to the people coming before us. The other thing that they recommended is something that districts do that we could incorporate is to include it in writing on the sign-in sheet as a third way to communicate that. I would agree with Director Miller, and probably many of you feel the same way. It always feels a little awkward, when people come before us in that fashion, and then all we essentially say is thank you for sharing. Generally speaking, depending on what the nature of the issue is or the comments being shared, those will oftentimes either get redirected, I think, to administration by the board president generally, to either look into and get information back, whether it be to the board, whether it be to the employees. I think our public has been very good about how they've handled the public comment section. I think sometimes what happens is those communications get shared without having gone through the proper chain of command, so to speak, in terms of if it's a concern. A lot of times it hasn't necessarily gone through all the levels of administration. Maybe it's a classroom issue, or maybe it's a building issue. And then, once that's been processed, the appropriate thing, if not satisfied, would be to take it to the district level to try to get the matter addressed at the lowest possible level, and then to the board. So oftentimes those things will be redirected either formally or informally in order to be addressed, because sometimes the board meeting might be the first time that we've heard of the situation. But I've shared with you only because I continue to research, and I was pretty sure, having sat in a number of different city council meetings, that their statement was relatively the same as ours relative to the public comments that come forward. And so that's why I've listed that here for you. And the one thing that I would say relative to our comment would be, it would probably behoove us to insert or add to the statement relative to the board members may not respond to your comments as the city has in order to comply with open meetings law, because I think that's the primary reason that it's highly recommended that that be the case. No one board member can speak for the entire board, and the dangers would be, depending on what is said, if it would encroach on open meetings law. And I think also that's what was referenced in the literature that I had provided regarding, making sure that these policies most recently were aligned with recent federal and or state cases in relationship to it.
Are you asking for us to vote on this?
Well, it wouldn't be voted on at this meeting because it would just be reviewed. It would come back before the board as a first reading at the next meeting.
So-
Oh, sorry.
So, public comment is section 3.01. And so our practice is we're not allowed, someone can make a comment about whatever they want to, and we're not allowed to say anything, but we thank them anyway for their comments, right? That's what you say. So that's what we do, because you say it. And that's what we do. We always do what you say, B.
Yeah.
So, but if there is comment that a board member has, for example, boy, when thus and so came to talk about whatever they came to talk about in section 3.01, and I'd like to talk about that in more detail at a future meeting. We always say that in section 7.06, other business, right? And so, but the person who came to talk about whatever they wanted to talk about, remember, these are taxpayers that voted us here, and they voted for us because of how we think and how we vote and, those types of things. They are long gone by the time we say, you know what, that was interesting, and I'd sure like to go into it in more detail in a future agenda. It would be powerful to at least be able to say that when they're standing here talking to us, as opposed to waiting for 90 minutes later, and then we can talk about it. So I don't think that all of the reasons that you've given, which sound like good reasons for not speaking, outweigh the simple courtesy of saying, you know what, I appreciate you coming, and we should find out a little more detail about that. I don't know that anybody, I think everybody understands open meetings rules, but I think we come off as rude and insensitive when we don't even recognize the value of what someone has to say. And I think that there's a middle ground between saying nothing and saying too much that we ought to look at, despite what this one line in ISB's policy. Public comment is set aside for community input, but the board will not discuss or take any action on any matter during public comment. Certainly understand not taking any action. I don't understand not being able to say, hey, thanks for coming. Let's look into it a little bit more. So that would be my opinion.
Other comments?
You thank me for them anyway.
I was going to say that the one thing we can do, and I think Aaron is right, which is exactly what I thought too when I read this, what the city does, is add this one piece of explanatory sentence at the end that, this is why we do this.
The insert.
The other thing that we could add would be to explain that if they do want to be on the agenda, they can by, going through the formal process, the same way everyone has to do. And that gives them the opportunity then to, further their comments.
Generally speaking, not to interrupt your train of thought, but generally speaking, anyone who is going to make a comment has contacted someone. The last meeting's person, I forget her name at this point, but she called me, and then she emailed and said, what do I need to do? And I explained the process to her. I said, if you want to call and talk to Dr. Schutte, you are welcome to ask that your item be placed as an agenda item. She was fine with the no comment, I just want you all to hear what I have to say. So I think that needs to be part of what we do as well, is to explain to them, as you said, that it needs to be an agenda item if you expect for people to respond to you.
Because when we started 4 years ago, we didn't have that little paragraph in there.
Correct.
And we added that. I think we could improve it a little bit, help that communication piece, explain it a little better, and still be able to solve problems, because in the end, that's what we're trying to do. And I think that it takes a long time for the community to trust us, but I think that in this case, the last time they came, I mean, I think everything was followed through on. I trust that it was, with the problems that we have, and we've been working through them, with this financial thing, going back to that. But anyway, we can do that anytime. We can add the verbiage to that paragraph without any kind of board approval.
And to B's point, when we are given a heads up, generally, we explain the two ways for which someone from our staff or the public can bring something before the board, whether it be through an agenda item, or if it's an agenda, they can come on something that is on the agenda to state their opinion, which they also would sign in on. Or for the public opinion portion of it, once that's presented, and it doesn't happen very often where at least I personally get a heads up or a question related to that, I can probably count on one hand or less, in the 2.5 years I've been here. But generally speaking, then I would bring that to board leadership, B and Janelle, to help determine what is the best way for that to come forward. Is it warrant a separate agenda item versus, being part of the public comment? And I would have the same, conversation with the person as B alluded to, relative to what it looks like and sounds like as part of the public comment part, or the public input portion of the meeting. But again, these policies would come back as a first reading. We could insert to bring further clarity. I think, Mike, in terms of what you said, if that were all that were said, I don't think there would be a problem with that at all. The danger is all of a sudden getting into a back and forth or a information and dialogue that then it would look and feel and act and smell like it was an agenda item versus just having been a public comment. And as long as we, we're all knowledgeable and on the same page relative to that, I think. But I would agree with you. It does feel very rigid in the way that, we approach that. And the hopes would be that not only are we thanking them for sharing whatever it is, but that if it warrants some sort of follow-up, that someone, including myself from the office, would be getting back to them relative to it.
As this will come back for the first reading at our next meeting, would you like a revision of the statement that we make, or that I make at the beginning of the meeting, to include the things that you suggested?
Yeah, I think we can do a little bit better job with that. I mean,
Take out the word anyway. Take out the word anyway.
Take out what?
The word anyway.
Yeah.
We thank you anyway.
Yeah.
We thank you for your comments.
Yeah.
I like the idea of putting it on the speaker sheet as well.
Okay. Okay. Other comments or questions? Then let's move on to the first reading of the policies that we have before us tonight.
We went ahead and put the general complaints policies on the agenda as well, because they're generally kind of captured along with what we just spoke about with public participation. And what I am recommending,
Might be in the wrong.
oh, I'm sorry, I'm in the wrong one. Go back. Graduation requirements. This is coming before you for, I think, at least the third time.
At least.
And it has not been revised since the last time that you saw it, though it had some prior changes to comply with what Jackie talked to us today about. So I would recommend approving that policy on graduation requirements without a second reading.
Do we have some other new policies there that you're going to, that we've seen before? Is debt management new? Or we've had debt management before?
We must have, it's in the.
Yeah, as well as post-insurance, post-issuance for tax X obligations. New 701.5, does that help you? You were just talking about 605.4.
Right.
How about 701.5?
701.5, we had scratched our former policy
Right, the
relative to
old.
that.
And the new is now 704.2R1.
Yes. And
Okay,
there have not been changes since the last time we brought that forward, so that could be approved without a second reading.
what about 703.3R?
703.3R was an amended financial planning calendar
Have
regulation.
changes been made since the last time?
Changes have not been made, so that could
Okay.
be approved.
And how about 704.2, debt management?
That was a new policy, and we have not made changes since we
Okay,
presented it.
so let's take these all together. Could I have a motion to adopt and waive the second reading for 605.4R, 704.2R1, 703.3R, and 704.2?
So moved.
Was that a Heitman?
Yep.
Heitman, Miller, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, the same. The motion carries 7-0. May I have a motion to delete 701.5?
So moved. Second.
Heitman, Fletcher, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion carries 7-0. Okay, we are down to 603.
So I'll start off, as I tried to do before incorrectly. So we have a couple, there's actually 3 different policies on public complaints, one of which was our existing policy, one of which is what we're recommending we adopt in conjunction with IASB language 213.1. And this was one of the policies that had significant revision by IASB last summer in conjunction with the public participation one. And then there's also a comparable policy that we had listed in the 400 section, public complaints about employees, which really isn't necessary because it's essentially the same wording as the policy that we're recommending be approved, whether it's about employees or others. So again, this is a review. It would come back before you, but I'm recommending that we adopt the new policy 213.1 on public complaints as recommended by ASB. We delete our former policy 204.11 titled General Complaints by Citizens, and we also delete, in lieu of the new policy, 402.5 public complaints about employees.
Any questions? Okay, so 213.1 will return. along with the deletion of its companion policies 204.11 and 402.5.
Correct. Next.
701.3.
Government, 701.3 is a new one, right? It's a ISB one that Dr. Schutte and I imagine Paulette is recommending that we adopt.
It's a recommended policy by ISB that we did not have.
That we didn't have, so it's a new policy.
A new one, yep.
Okay. Any questions on financial records before we move on? Okay, Ben?
And 704.1, no changes except for some references, so would recommend marking it as reviewed.
Okay.
And then 703.5 has some significant changes to it, renumbering, basically adding a language about making the finance committee also the audit committee. I think mainly talks about adding the responsibility to recommend an auditor and some other language to describe the responsibilities of the committee.
Okay.
It's one of my questions that I didn't get asked before. The last line of this is the finance audit committee is subject to open meetings law. Does that mean, and I don't know the current practice, maybe you already do, but does that mean there needs to be agendas and minutes published? Okay.
And they're open for people to
Open
attend.
for people to attend. Okay. So is that,
Paulette does that.
okay. So that one really didn't come back.
Okay. What about 703.4?
Yeah, 703.4 is a policy. It's basically on the performance measures that the Finance Committee has talked about a couple times. Since this fall, there's still some work to be done in terms of ultimately getting those identified. So we've asked that that one just be pulled for the time being with the intent to bring it back before the end of this year.
Any objections to that? Okay. Well, surprisingly enough, that went quickly.
A short list. And
Mr. Potter, anything new?
all the work.
Legislative update from the superintendent?
I attended the MEA breakfast forum or luncheon with Senator Edler and Representative Smith were in attendance. A lot of the time was taken talking about, the desire, as we usually hear, for SSA to be determined early on in this session. Quite a bit of time was spent regarding the mental health arena and what can be done to help provide supports for juveniles as it related to mental health support and services, knowing that there's also a need for retooling on the adult side of things. Senator Edler's actually on the committee relative to that, and of course, that's been something that's been Mark Smith's passion due to his profession for a long, long time. Most recently, I've heard that there's actually some discussion going on with the school calendar, which was a bit of a surprise. Of course, we've had, on our priorities, school calendar, the two bills that are basically going simultaneous. One was a desire to further move the start date from August 23rd to the 25th. The other, which has much more appeal to me personally, would be to change the start date instead of identifying a date to say basically the first Monday following the conclusion of the state fair or the 23rd, whichever comes first. This has kind of come to a head in part this year due to the fact that the 23rd August 23rd in 2019 falls on a Friday. So as you may remember from when we adopted our calendar, We're waiting to the 26th, which is a Monday to start school, because starting one day of school and then having 2 days off probably isn't the most beneficial. So in the event that the legislature does change that, we may want to revisit the start date for 2019 in conjunction with that. That would provide us with some flexibility to move some things around a little bit. Also continue to hear interest in renewing SAVE, the statewide sales tax for school infrastructure. The latest has been designating the date of 2050, which would actually be an extension beyond the 20 years it has been previously approved for. The caveat, as you remember, because we've heard from Senator Edler on a couple of occasions now, concerns on the legislature's part in terms of where some of the monies and projects have been focused with school districts, particularly as it relates to athletic facilities. It sounds like what they're wanting to ensure has taken place before allowing for athletic facility improvements is to make sure all school districts have secured their school buildings in order to make them safe and secure. So I'm not exactly sure what their definition of secured would be, although we for some time have had the foresight to make sure that all of our buildings are secured from an entry and exit, or particularly an entry standpoint during the course of the school day. So I'm pretty sure what that's referring to, that districts have taken measures to physically secure their facilities during the course of the day, as well as to effectively process visitors and that sort of thing.
Sounds like there's been some traction on the financial literacy delay.
Yeah, in addition to that, and credit goes to Senator Edler and Senator Smith and others that I reached out to, they're really moving, it seems, quickly to decide whether they want to roll back the implementation start date for the financial literacy piece to coincide with next year's ninth grade students as being the first class to be expected or required to have financial literacy during their 4 years. That's, in my opinion, the way it should have been implemented to begin with, to give enough time for districts to plan for the long term how they were going to meet that requirement. That would be a positive thing. It's an awkward thing in that we couldn't just bank on or hope that that was going to happen. So we've, as you know, and have heard from prior presentations by Mrs. Wyatt, Mr. Gosling, we've implemented a short-term solution to how to help kids in the junior and sophomore classes get through while working on a long-term plan for the incoming freshmen next year. In the event that it does get rolled back, then we will need to communicate with students as well as parents that are currently enrolled in either the online course or the face-to-face course to say, essentially, you've got some different options. One is we really feel like it's good for your child to have this before they move on, so we would encourage you to consider staying in it. Another option would be, especially if they're taking the face-to-face, which is a business elective, we could give them the option to either have that continue to be a business elective, or they could transfer the credit to a social studies credit to meet their graduation requirement in that regard, or the third option would be to choose to drop the course. Again, this has been kind of it's unfortunately needed to be a fast-track thing because the requirement came through in the 12th hour and it applied immediately to this year's juniors. So, but we feel like those are three good options that current students and or their parents who have been put in a position of having to decide quickly whether to take it second semester or not can have some different options on how they want that handled.
So like my son is a ninth grader, is taking that class right now. Is he going to have to take it again?
No, not if, no. Well, number one, if he's taking it right now, second semester, Mrs. Nelson Loopy has adjusted what had existed as our curriculum to meet the law. But the chances are he would not have to have it as a graduation requirement if they roll this requirement back. The first class that would be expected to have it as part of their graduation requirement would be the class of 2023, which would be this year's 8th graders. But I would suggest that it is an excellent class to have under your belt.
Looking at reminders, we have a special board meeting on Wednesday of this week from 5 to 7. And will we be in the boardroom or the conference room?
We are scheduled to be in the boardroom.
Our next school board meeting is on the 18th, and Hoagland Elementary will be making their school presentation. Mr. Harris is up for review of policies. You only have 4? How did you get so lucky?
I don't want to brag, but I'm done.
Okay. Yeah, well.
You know what?
So much.
And we thank you anyway.
You wait, Mr. Miller, for my quote today. It's for you.
Oh, awesome.
Anyway. Looking at committee reports, the Equity Advisory Committee met. Do Ross or Karina have comments? Okay. What have we done this evening to improve the education for all students?
I think it's been kind of nice to see the changes on the high school catalog. It's really
Just a little catalog.
just a little.
Okey dokey, any other items for future agendas? Any other business to come before the board? My quote is actually for the whole board, not just Mike, but I was thinking of Mike when I chose it.
All right.
Find a group of people who challenge and inspire you. Spend a lot of time with them, and it will change your life. May I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Fletcher, Miller, all in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned.